Hello and welcome back to Massalia Tales. On the last episode, we saw a battle against the Sequani army north of Massalia, where we teamed up with the city garrison to completely overwhelm them and destroy them with minimal casualties, securing the city. However, the Pictones were on the way towards the city from the recently conquered province of Tolosa. I almost engaged them before they arrived. Because of their fortifications and their large number of spear-throwing heavy spearmen, I didn't really want to engage them. However, when they fortified a bridge position, I knew that forcing a bridge battle would mean I didn't have to fight them inside their fortifications. It was a hard battle though. The enemy attacked me, so it turned into a bridge defense. I tried to hold them at the bridge itself whilst breaking through at a ford downriver, but the enemy put up heavy resistance and meant it took quite a long time for me to break through. In the end though, I did manage to get through, and we attacked the enemy on the bridge from behind using cavalry, defeating all of their skirmishers on the way, and eventually the enemy's morale was broken, especially after their general was killed attempting to hold me off at the ford. So with the defeat of this force, the path to Tolosa is now clear. Let's continue. With the immediate threat dealt with, the council now ordered the daemons of Polymus to advance without rest towards Tolosa. They gambled that their colony could be liberated and secured before the new threats from the north or east came into striking distance of the city. Thus Eusebios, leaving his wounded behind, marched his surviving troops across the bridge they had defended and into the familiar countryside of Western Provincia. Behind every tree was an enemy agent. It is certain that Massalia's enemies took notice of the daemons moving away from the city. It wouldn't be long before they would act on this key information. So we've just defeated the Pictones at that river battle, a heroic victory for Eusebios and the daemons of Polymus, backed up of course by Gelon and his cavalry-based reinforcements. We've lost a lot of our heavy infantry though, so that is a problem. We have lost about a third of our men overall. The enemy though have suffered much worse. They've lost almost everyone, and I'm going to kill all of the captives just to make it even worse for them. Eusebios gets a well-earned rank up as well. Now curiously, he has enough movement points to attack Tolosa right away if I ignore the enemy's survivors, which I think I'm safe to do. If they do go for the city itself, Gelon should easily be able to defeat them, especially with the garrison getting involved. So the question was, do I want to attack straight for Tolosa, or do I want to go back and restore some of my troops? If the Pictones have brought down more forces to defend Tolosa, or have an army just off to the west that will reinforce it if I attack it, then I'll be putting Eusebios in a very dangerous position by attacking. But I decided to gamble because I knew I didn't have much time until more forces attack Massalia, so I need to resolve the Tolosa situation quickly, especially because our economy depends on it. So as I attack, luckily there's no enemy reinforcements, just a fairly healthy looking garrison army. The balance bar is very far in our favour, but I really can't auto-resolve because those heavy infantry regiments that are very depleted will probably end up just being wiped out. So I need to fight this battle myself, do it as carefully as I can to preserve my forces so that they can be regenerated as soon as possible. So let's have a look at the formation. I've got my relatively healthy sword units on the left side ready to raid the enemy's flank. My front line is going to be my Gallic levies who didn't take many losses against the Pictones. The second line are some of the medium strength hoplite units, including Eusebios himself here with his guards. These are the guys that took some casualties but could still take part in the battle. Right at the back we've got the units that took extreme casualties in previous fights and now aren't really going to be useful for anything. I want to keep them out of the fight to make sure their numbers stay where they are. I don't want them getting any lower. You can see to begin with I have this really good position on a really nice hill, but the enemy are going to use their defender's advantage to defend this little ridge position they have here, so I'm going to have to move towards them, a good move from the AI. Now as I start to get closer, I pulled forward a bunch of my archers. I wanted to draw the enemy forward by skirmishing with them, and it seems to work even before I actually get my plan started. They just start advancing right towards me as I get close to their position, so they'll give up their little bit of high ground and come down to fight me here on this open area. My archers will still manage to get a couple of shots at them as they advance, but really skirmishing isn't going to do much in the opening phase of the battle. I'm moving up my light forces ready to receive the enemy once they arrive. The enemy do have a number of armed townsfolk who of course don't have shields and are especially vulnerable to arrow fire. However, I'm not actually going to fire at them because they're such low priority targets that I'd rather fire at these garrison warriors who we've seen before are actually pretty powerful. They're superior to hoplites in combat, so those are the guys I need to watch out for. We do have their army outflanked on both sides. I've got slingers firing into the enemy's left flank, which should do a nice bit of damage. The main line is now engaging. My Gallic levies moving up to lock the enemy in position so I can begin outflanking them. We did send these tribesmen to attack my flanking force on my left. I'm going to use one regiment of swords to stop these tribesmen from doing anything. They do a very slow charge. I'm surprised at how slowly these raiding swordsmen charge. Perhaps it's a Divide Impera thing. The other regiment is going to go and attack the enemy's main line in the back. Far behind the enemy's army, I've got my cavalry marauding around. I need to take out these slingers who are firing at my line, but my cavalry are being distracted by enemy spears at the moment, so I can't quite do it. I decided to engage the second line of moderately healthy hoplites into this battle just to plug up any gaps and make sure my Gallic levies don't take too many losses. Since the enemy are locked in position, I can now use my very large number of skirmishing units to start whittling them away. The archers will fire over the top. They have nice arcs into the big blobs of enemy troops. Already some of them are falling back. Behind the enemy's army, you can see I've got my cavalry finally in a position to attack the enemy slingers, so we're going to hit them with some javelins and then try and rush them off the field. Unfortunately, the enemy is pretty quick to react with the spears you can see right next to me, so I'm going to have to get out of there for now. But at this point, it doesn't really matter if I don't kill those slingers, because the main body of the enemy's army is going to be defeated rapidly. The surviving bit here, all these Gallic tribesmen have a nice bit of morale because they're backing each other up. We've got them really surrounded. The sky is raining down arrows upon them. And we've also got javelins nearby who have just moved up to hit them with some heavy missile fire. They're also being outflanked there by hoplites. The javelins especially will do extreme damage. A couple of volleys will be enough to kill 50 or so of these guys, which will completely demoralize them. Plus we are outflanking them even more, as you can see. Really, it's just a few disparate units we need to clean up. My swordsmen should do pretty well against these enemy spearmen, although Gallic tribesmen are actually pretty powerful. This engagement here, my swords fighting the enemy Gallic tribesmen from the front, both sides took equal losses, perhaps because the enemy has a slight hill advantage here. I was surprised at how poorly my swordsmen performed, but we are going to be outflanking the enemy pretty rapidly, and their morale isn't very good, so I don't even have to kill very many of them to rush them off the field. So I'm sure you'll believe me when I say that very quickly this battle turned into a chain rout for the enemy. We surrounded all of their remaining units, winning a nice decisive victory without having to lose any men from our units that were already severely depleted. So this means Tolosa is now back in our hands, a chance to regenerate some troops unless the enemy have something else planned.
How many more times will this happen? The Greeks claim that we are satellite of their city-state, and yet they offer us no protection in this time of war. The Gauls claim that we have abandoned our tribal heritage and demand we join their kingdoms or face their wrath. Never have the people of Tolosa been allowed to truly have their say. We are not ruled by who we wish, but by whoever is willing to kill our people to establish control. It is a different taxman every year, for God's sake. Perhaps the question is not how many more times will this happen, but how many more times we will allow it happen when we realize that our loyalty to either side is worthless.
So here are the results. It was a battle with only minimal casualties, and most of those casualties were among units that are of course replaceable, shall we say, the Gallic levies in particular. So Tolosa is finally back in our hands. Of course that isn't the first time I've had to say that, perhaps it won't be the last. The army will now regenerate really quickly as a result of being inside a settlement. So in just a couple of turns the army will actually be ready to fight again. So hopefully Gelon can hold out over at the city until the time comes that the Daemons are ready to march again. There are still those Pictone survivors to worry about, but there's not too many of them. Once the city garrison comes out onto the field, they definitely won't be able to take Massalia, and Tolosa is of course secure. So it's really going to be new threats coming in that will be the biggest problem. I wanted to see whether the Pictones would agree to peace, since we have just defeated one of their main forces and taken back one of their territories, but of course they won't. It's becoming a theme in Massalia Tales that absolutely everyone seems to hate us, and even being soundly defeated doesn't seem to be ground for peace in the eyes of these barbarians. Now back over in the east, Carpos is investigating the province of Asia. We've discovered a few new factions. We've discovered the Egyptians, who seem to be controlling the Asian coast there, so they've obviously become very powerful, and inevitably they don't want to trade with us, even though we do share a culture with them. They also definitely don't want to go into non-aggression, so perhaps they don't like us. That seems to be a theme as well. A lot of the Greek states don't really like us, unfortunately. The Athenians don't want to go into non-aggression. I thought they really would, since they are so closely affiliated with us, but perhaps not. The Pictones moved that second main force they had back down towards Massalia, so it seems the Daemons of Polymus may have to return to the city very quickly. We do have some good, or at least neutral, news. We've just been through one of Divide A Impera's features, a military reform session. It's the Thureophoroi military reforms. This basically unlocks units that can use the Thuros shield. As it notes in the text here, that isn't necessarily to say that these units are better, they're just different units. So it's expanded our roster of units. Essentially, we can now recruit new types of unit that are essentially the same as the ones we already have, but they have the Thuros shield instead of the Hoplon, which gives them slightly different stats. I can also upgrade some of my swordsmen to be the new Thuros swordsman. They're essentially the same. I'll get up the recruitment panel here. We can have a little check. So here we have the sword of the old and new regime. You can see the unit stats are pretty similar. They have advantages and disadvantages that are just slightly differently distributed. So there's no real advantage using the new units, but perhaps they'll come in useful anyway. So we've got a situation to deal with. The Pictones appear to be on the way towards Massalia again, so the Daemons need to come back. And you can see in just one turn, they've healed tons of their troops. The guys in the red have made it back to the yellow, and the rest of them are almost up to the green because they restored troops so quickly. On the way, I'm going to wipe out the Pictones survivors from the previous battle. It's really fortunate for me that they actually retreated in the direction of Massalia, so I can use my movement points very usefully going towards my destination anyway by chasing them down. I'm going to enslave the few captives we took from that battle. And now Eusebios is free to move on to the city. I want Gelon to come out of the city. He's in there restoring troops, but it's more important that Eusebios' forces get restored, so he's going to go outside. Whoever stands outside is subject to tons of agent actions. The enemy are still agent spamming me. It's very unfortunate, but I think Gelon's going to have to just take it because I do need to restore Eusebios' troops. I'm also going to give Gelon an extra unit of cavalry because there's not much use having the cavalry inside the city in the event of a siege, so having Gelon outside to be able to reinforce from behind the enemy lines with cavalry could be useful, so he's just going to wait out there, also with a few javelins just to reinforce. I wanted to send my spy west to find out exactly what was going on west of Tolosa, because now that I've abandoned it yet again, it could fall yet again, so I wanted to know what the chance was. I don't see anything coming immediately, so we've got at least one turn, and it was at this moment, and perhaps the same moment for you, that I noticed that Celtic Confederation army on the right hand side of the screen. Previously I actually hadn't seen them come in, so as I was here recruiting units, I suddenly spotted them standing on the border there, actually just over the border, a very aggressive move, so it's very lucky that I did decide to move the Daemons back to Massalia because it seems it's in trouble. Now we have this very interesting diplomatic encounter. The advisor guy from the top left corner of the screen has decided to come to me on behalf of the Arverni to declare war on me. A strange decision considering that I was already at war with the Arverni, and who is he to speak for the Arverni anyway? I think what actually happened is the Arverni went into some sort of confederation, but then some offshoot faction still called the Arverni was created anew, and then they have just declared war on me immediately. And for some reason that guy is their representative. Not 100% sure what's going on there, but we'll see. Also declaring war on me is the Sestani. We have been at war with them before. Our relations were actually pretty good. We seem to have built up a pretty good relationship after the war, but apparently that's not going to help. They want war with us, and that's going to be really inconvenient because they can now attack Tolosa and Massalia, in fact from the south. The Confederation forces move towards the city and then fortify. They are too scared to attack, it seems. The Pictones do exactly the same thing. So now we have these two full stacks of troops just standing around outside the city. And the new threat from Tarraco here could come up to attack Tolosa or Massalia at any moment. But some good news is that Nemesis has fallen, a former Arverni stronghold. It's the Celt-Iberian Confederation who are relatively friendly towards us, who seem to be conquering their way north. This is very promising. The Gallic Confederation, who the Arverni are now part of, are probably going to be very threatening to us very soon, so it would be ideal to me if they could get defeated by the Celt-Iberians. At least I'd have a chance of maintaining a peace with them. So here's that Celtic Confederation army. It's got some pretty decent looking units. The Pictones army has tons of those annoying spearmen throwing javelins, so I don't really want to attack them, especially because they're fortified. Pretty much the same situation with the last Pictones army. I don't want to attack a fortified position where I'm going to have missiles raining down upon me as I try to attack. So the option now is to either attack the Celtic Federation army or to do nothing and hope they both attack me at the same time in the city. At first I was thinking I was going to go for the former option. I moved Eusebios up to do battle with the Celtic Confederation, but then I realised the city garrison isn't going to get involved in the battle, and as you can tell from the balance bar, it's not a very favourable situation, made even worse by the fact that the enemy has fortifications. So I decided that actually I'm not going to bother. I'm going to gamble on the second option. I'm going to defend the city if I can and hope they attack me and get themselves crushed against our walls. It seems we can hardly go a season without crisis. I think that after Xenon's antics in the interior, we've managed to become the mutual enemy of every tribe from here to the outer sea. Damn barbarians love pretending to like each other while there's gold to be had from doing so. And the writers from Greece say that the boy Karpos has found that the stuck-up bunch of poets we left there hate us as well. Truly, we are alone here, and as ever it seems it is up to me to sort this mess out. Send word to Eusebios. Tell him I have considered his request to cower inside the city, and that I am ill at ease with it. Tell him to prepare for battle. Back over in the east, Karpos has made contact with two city-states, Rhodos and Knossos. It seems Rhodos don't really want to have anything to do with us, which is quite inconvenient. The guys at Knossos are very enthusiastic to go into non-aggression, which is good news. Finally, someone who actually seems to like us. I wanted to see if I could get trade with them as well. The chance was moderate. I gave them the offer and they accepted. Finally, this expedition to the east has actually borne some fruit. We've got some trade with a potential Greek ally. This is also very important to me because it gives me a constant stream of intelligence on what's going on between this distant island and the city of Massalia, so we can see some of the major factions, especially the Carthaginians, and what they're up to, at least a tiny bit of what they're up to. We can get an idea of what's going on, so that could be vital going forwards. Now going into the next turn, the Celtic Confederation moved their forces over to be beside the Pictones. They're reinforcing each other now, making it even harder for me to defeat them until the Pictones just move back to where the Celtic Confederation was. So they've swapped places. I don't know what they were thinking, perhaps a little bit of cross wires when they were communicating with each other. The Rieti, as ever, are trying to be rather inconvenient with their agents, but one of them gets wounded in the process, and then, as we saw just there, they move an army up to the border. It appears they intend to join the party camping outside our city, ready to attack. I get this message saying that Karpos is trying to be adopted, someone's trying to adopt him, sorry. I'm not going to allow this. What this means for Massalia is that he would be taken off the ruling council, but as I said before, he's a very promising officer, so I want to keep him in the ruling party to make our influence remain strong. So we've wounded an enemy agent, excellent news. The two enemy armies have swapped places, which I guess is about neutral news, but the Rieti have moved up another force now, fortified on the border, surely going to attack at any moment. So this means that really I'm going to have to at least try and dispatch one of these armies before they get even stronger. The enemy have the advantage in playing the waiting game. They can get stronger and stronger as all of the people who hate me show up to fight me. And I have limited time, especially because the Sessitani might show up and take Tolosa at any moment. So I had to make a decision about which army to attack, and I'm going to attack the one which, according to the balance bar, is actually the stronger army, the Confederation one, just because they don't have all of those spear-throwing heavy spearmen who I know will do very well in a fortification battle. So the objective here is to try and defeat this stronger army without taking many losses, so that if those other two armies do decide they want to fight as well, we're still in a fit state to do so. So let's take a look at the opening of this battle at least. Here's their enemy camp, a pretty standard affair, just a square camp, and we're going to slowly move towards it from the south with the main body of our army. For now, we're not going to be outflanking the enemy's camp. First, I need to make an opportunity for myself to do so, and to do that, I've got these little groups of archers protected by a couple of melee guys who are going to come up around the camp. The first objective is to attack each corner of the camp where the enemy has guard towers. I'm going to hit those guard towers with fire arrows. What I want to do here is to completely destroy them, so that if I have to engage the enemy in a prolonged fight at the edge of their camp, these guys aren't going to be raining arrows down upon me the whole time. time, which over a long fight of about 10 minutes, they can kill hundreds of your troops if you don't pay too much attention to them firing at you. So I'm going to destroy them from the beginning. It takes about 2 volleys of flaming arrows, depending on the accuracy of the troops firing them, to set the fire damage to 100%. Once the fire damage is 100%, the health of the tower will just gradually deplete over time, so my men can pull away, get out of range of the tower so it can't fire back, and then just wait for the fire to do its work. So there's 4 of these towers, 1 on each corner, and now I'm going to do the same thing to all of them before I even consider attacking. The other thing I need to do is to start destroying some of the walls, especially at the front, so that I can open up some avenues for myself to get in and flank the enemy's defensive position. Here we are a tiny bit later, the first tower crumbling to dust. A nice victory for those fire archers. So they're now going to focus on the walls, as I said. We're going to try and take down as many sections of the wall as we can at the front, and a couple at the edges of the camp to allow me to sneak in. The enemy have got their decent heavy troops at the front defending the entrances to the camp, and every time I open up a new gap in the wall, they will send more troops to defend that gap. So there's no way for me to get into the camp without having to pass through some defenders until the enemy have engaged all of their troops. The towers at the back took a little bit longer to destroy because my archers took ages to get there, but eventually all of the towers were gone and I went on to phase 2, hitting the enemy's front walls with fire arrows. These fire arrows are a little bit less effective against the walls than they are against the towers. It can take a couple of volleys, sometimes even 3, to take down even a tiny section of the wall. But for me, that's a worthy use of ammunition. Now you can see here the enemy's general is actually standing right next to the wall, leading one of his squads. So I'm opening up a gap right in front of the general, and curiously enough, this has a very positive effect. Basically, the enemy just stand there as the wall begins to crumble, cheering at me, jeering at me, and not realizing that when the wall falls over, they're going to be crushed. The front row of this regiment is crushed, including the enemy's general. This is a fantastic turn of luck. Right at the start of the battle, we've taken out their general, meaning the entire enemy army will be suffering in terms of morale for the rest of the fight. There's plenty more regiments who can be crushed by falling walls as well, so I'm going to exploit that as best I can before the main assault, which we'll see next time. The Pictones forces, seeing that the city was well protected, invited the Confederation army to join them in an attack on the walls. But when the two armies met, disagreements between them at every level of planning seemed to make cooperation impossible. The Confederation, being mostly Greek-influenced mountain folk, had little in common with the more Gallic Pictones, and found it much easier to see their cultural differences as a source of rivalry than as a chance for union. Thus the armies went their separate ways, much to the delight of the Massalian army. But news of pro-Confederation rioty warbands en route spoiled the good spirit.